Greetings to all throughout the known world and welcome to another exciting episode of The Crown Between Two Roses. I'm Duchess Eva, joined today by Duchess Engelin, and today we're very privileged to be spending some time interviewing the latest Baron and Baroness of the Barony of St. Florian de la Riviere, Baron William and Baroness Lovet. Thank you, Your Excellencies, for joining us today.
Thanks very much, Your Graces. It's lovely to be talking to you.
Awesome. So I'll kick off with our acknowledgement. Good nobles, we come here together in the spirit of fellowship, deepening of our skills, sharing of our knowledge, and a shared interest in the search to find truth through experimental archaeology and historical inquiry. It is in this context that I, Engelin, on behalf of my kingdom, acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands upon which we gather. We recognise their continuing connection to land and culture, and we pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and the elders from other communities who may be here today. Thanks, guys. It's lovely to see you on this Saturday morning. We all got our coffees ready, I think, and ready to kick into it. So one of our first questions is usually, how did you find the SCA and what's your origin story?
Yeah. So I actually first found the SCA through the College of St. Basil the Great in Anyala. This was back in 2008. And I grew up in WA, so I was going to university for the first time, and they were having a demonstration at the open day there. And I saw people playing with swords, and they were wearing historical clothing, and they were just doing all the things that I was into, was really into history. And so I was just like, this is the place for me. And so I got involved in the Barony of Anyala through that. And then from there, continued playing when I moved over east.
Well, I found out about the SCA at a pub where I was drinking with some of the younger siblings of some members of the SCA, and they were all there and we were talking about it, and I was promised that there would be boys with swords and I could drink in a field and I could wear a pretty princess dress, and I was like, hey, I want to be part of that. And so that was how I found it. I think my first event was Knights of the North, and then went to festival, and so I played in St. Florian for a couple of years and then moved down to Palit, and then have moved back to St. Florian in the meantime.
Fantastic. So we haven't had the opportunity to interview specifically the B&B of St. Florian previously. I understand that you both recently stepped up in June. Congratulations. It's always an interesting transition. But can you tell us what territories St. Florian covers?
Mm-hmm. So St. Florian covers the south part of Brisbane. So southern side of the river, through Logan, through the Redlands, right the way down through the Gold Coast up to the start of New South Wales. So everything north of the river is River Haven.
Yeah, it's funny because River Haven encompasses the rest of Queensland because they were sort of the original barony in Queensland. And then St. Florian, we just have this like nice little pocket of southeast Queensland.
So no shires?
No. I believe there previously was a group in the Gold Coast, which was, I'm blanking on the name. I still have the ceremonial horn. It was a ceremonial Woods. Horn. Bacchus Woods, that's the one. Yeah.
Yes. It's
part of the baronial regalia, but it doesn't get used very much, and I get bad looks when I take it out to blow. So.
One of the very striking things about St. Florian is the purple, and all the B&Bs before you, and I guess the guards and everything. There's a lot of very bright purple. How are you finding the transition to a purple wardrobe?
It's been very handy to be able to say, okay, these are my Baroness clothes and these are my previous clothes. I used to be very into pushing the boundaries as far as SCA clothing went, where I kind of verged a little bit on cosplay, and now I'm very traditionally medieval, which is an interesting transition for me. But I think William wore a lot more traditional clothes to me.
Yeah. I mean, I had a lot of different sort of hand-me-down garbs as well. So I think probably stepping up as Baron was probably one of the things to spur me on to actually make some outfits, probably. But I think the biggest difference is that whenever we go anywhere, I'm always finding the purple fabric. It's like you can't go anywhere without being like, oh, that would look great, or oh, this would be a great design. I've never noticed this before, and suddenly purple's everywhere.
We've been really lucky to be gifted a lot of purple fabric as well. So,
it is a lovely color. Like I'm a big fan of that color. I don't wear any purple, but it looks good.
There's a lot of different shades as well, which is really nice. You can have sort of more like magenta, sort of like a bright red purple, or you can go like really deep purple, like we did for our investiture garb. But yeah, you can sort of play around with it. It's nice.
It was one of my concerns when William first suggested becoming B&B, because I was like, I don't look good in purple. Like, we're going to have to move back to Palit. I'm sorry, I'm a red person.
Well, you both look fantastic, so don't worry about it. So you've only, sorry, Eva, did you want to go?
You go.
I was going to say, you've only recently stepped up. What was it that encouraged you or made you feel that you would want to be the Baron and Baroness of St. Florian?
It's kind of an interesting question. I was the one who came up with the idea, and I'm not really sure. I think it just sort of, for me, it just sort of felt like something I would like to put my hand up for. I mean, I hadn't really considered it until Rufus and Tova had announced that they would be stepping down. And then it was just one of those things where it was like, well, we could do this, and we could do some of the things that we wanted. We could have some of the court drama that we want to have, and it'd be a really good way to be more involved in the barony as well.
It was a tough time too, because St. Florian wasn't really affected by COVID as much as some of the southern baronies, but there was still that after effect where everyone was just a little bit tired and they didn't really want to venture out too much. And so we just kind of thought, okay, we can take the wheel a bit here and steer the barony going forward.
And I think that's one of the advantages, I guess, with the timing of having a new Baron and Baroness as we're coming out of COVID, hopefully, is that you do have a little bit more energy. Whereas Rufus and Tova had obviously served 3 years and they have a family, and so they have a lot of they had a lot of things on their plate. So it was a good sort of point to transition, I guess.
So I suppose that's a good point to ask, without giving too much away. What is your sort of vision for how you would like to move forward with your reign? Because now is the perfect time to think of these things right at the start before anything else happens.
Yeah, I mean, personally, sort of my vision of the barony, or how I would like to see it, is having sort of a lot of smaller face-to-face events, and sort of transitioning back to actually going to tournaments and feasts and events like that, but without necessarily having to commit to a full weekend, because that's one of the things with SEA events, is they can take a lot of energy out of you. So having a lot of smaller events to really encourage people to come back in and remember why we like to play the game. And I guess in terms of just vision for the barony, I like the idea of having sort of an energetic Baron and Baroness, sort of leading by example and having a lot of court pomp and ceremony. I think probably also just getting everything organized and having everything, ready to go and set up so that we can just logistically
thriving, prosperous barony. Obviously, we're all very peaceful merchants up here, so you shouldn't expect too much drama from us.
Well, now that Rufus is gone, I think. Is there a theme to what you're going to do as part of your tenure? Like particular period or style, or?
Well, so we've aimed mostly for sort of 14th century France or Western Europe, I suppose, at the moment, but we are also looking at sort of branching off into a few different areas.
We've been lucky in that some of the fabrics and gifts that we've been given, we've had little inspirations around them. So I think there'll be some fun garb coming up in the future, but at the moment we are predominantly French 14th century.
I suppose one of the things with Brisbane is that the climate here does sort of make you start to try and think of more like Eastern clothing and clothing that's designed for warmer weather. So that might also be a good idea.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I'd say that's one of the most obvious traditions of St. Florian, is always having a stunningly good-looking, well-dressed B&B. So it must be a little daunting, but your garb so far has looked amazing. So you're doing very well.
Thank you.
Thank you. There are so many buttons.
There were, I think, something like 70 or more buttons on my investiture cloak, and I sewed them all like the weekend before the event.
Yeah. We were very lucky that our household were there to get us ready, our baronial household, because I did not have time to assist with the buttons.
Yeah, I was sitting there. Lovet decided more sanely than I to go with a dress that would then lace up. And I'm like, no, 14th century, it's all about buttons. It's going to look amazing. And it did, but there were a lot of buttons. And I'm just like, I'm doing them on as we're getting dressed for investiture. And Lovet's like, oh, I think they're calling court. And I'm like, I'm not ready.
Yeah. When I've done 14th century, the secret is there are some false buttons. The sleeves don't need functional buttons unless you want them real tight. So just put them on the outside and hope for the best.
That's a good idea. I might just take that one down.
Yeah. I've been trying to convince him that he needs a Velcro tunic for when he switches from fighting to court. Like, you can't come to court in your sweaty fighting outfit.
I mean, if it's a good looking sweaty fighting outfit.
Yeah, exactly.
Except, of course, for you, Lovet, who has to sit next to him, but nobody else knows.
It's all about the appearance for the populace. That's the sacrifice that we must all make.
Yes, do it for the Instagram.
Being stinky is period.
Everyone was smelly in period. So that's something that's very interesting, that might be a peek behind the curtain for some that are thinking about stepping up as B&B or possibly as king and queen, was you had a relatively short time to prepare for your elevation. So how did the plan unfold to sort of get you ready for the day, and who was involved? It sounds like you had a team of helpers.
Yeah, we were incredibly lucky in that Drake and Akasha opened up their house to us, and we had a working bee 1 or 2 weekends beforehand.
Yeah.
Where there were many. Sarah Mari had sent us the plan for how you make little ermine tails.
Yep.
So we had a working bee to make tiny little ermine tails.
We had an idea of what we wanted to make for our investiture garb, which definitely wasn't shamelessly ripped off from a period TV drama.
So, yes, we watched Nightfall last year, and so as soon as they announced that we were going to be the next B&B, I was like, oh my god, I need the hair and I need the cloak. And yes, so we did not shake.
Yeah, we had sort of a picture of King Philip and Queen Joan of France from the television series, and we had that sort of image of like, this is the thing that we want. 14th century, very big cloaks and lots of billowing, and
that's risky.
yeah, and I guess like one of the things I really like wanted to do was like wear like robes of state, because peers in the 14th century and later it becomes more sort of ceremonial and a bit sort of pomp and ceremony, and I really liked the idea of having a giant St. Florian cloak and then having an ermine mantle and having all of that very high court.
We're both a big fan of the high court events. We just think it gives it that little bit of ceremony around it. So we're not really a casual B&B, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, coming from Anyala, where at the time it was sort of like the Baron and Baroness, and I suppose maybe it's because you didn't have that many royal visits because it is so remote there, but the Baron and Baroness is sort of like, when they have court, you would sit and listen, and it was a big ceremony, and it was very important that the B&B be sort of, not aloof so much, but I suppose there's a certain dignity that you have to sort of, a gravity. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that makes complete sense. You looked amazing, and you stood up in June in Queensland weather, so you get mad props. That would have been so hot.
It wasn't too bad. So it was the middle of winter, and it was shaded, so it wasn't too bad. But it's still stuffy. If you're wearing, I think anywhere in Australia, maybe except for Tasmania, if you're wearing 3 or 4 layers, then you're going to be a little bit stuffy.
Just thinking about all of the Great Northern Wars, that even though it's in June, it's still bloody hot during the day.
Yeah, of course. And you get the rains as well, which doesn't actually cool anything. It just puts the moisture in the air, and you get that famous Queensland humidity.
Yeah.
So you've both spent some time in other baronies. What do you think St Florian is known for across Lockhart?
Well, I'm going to say style. I think we're one of the more stylish baronies.
Yeah, I mean,
without throwing down the challenge to too many others.
It's something that you said before as well, is that like St. Florian, particularly the B&B, have like a habit or a history of like wearing just like really, really good garb, and I think that that's one of the traditions that we've sort of seen.
Yeah, and the purple is very recognizable. So I think other than that, St. Florian has a number of incredibly active and strong households. So their presence as being one of the larger baronies is known out there.
So how do you work with that, with such strong household groups, and you also want that baronial presence? How do those relationships work?
Well, that was something that we talked about before we took on the mantle. So I am a member of the household of Descartes, and William is a member of the Badgers, and we really discussed building our own baronial household around us, because we wanted the barony to be incredibly inclusive while still acknowledging that there are other households that have such a big impact on us and the things that we do.
Yeah, and households they're a really good thing, but they can be there is that tendency to sort of see that maybe they're detrimental to the group as a whole. But I think this really depends on the perspective, and it depends on how people engage with the barony. And I guess the way we see it is that households are a good thing because they give people that smaller community, and it's very tight knit, and people find a place where they feel they belong. And I guess our idea was not to prevent that from happening, but just to sort of give a larger baronial structure and a baronial household where people could also feel that they belong if they don't gravitate to one of the existing households. And, we've taken on several courtiers to sort of build our court presence. And then especially coming back to face events, we're going to try to have more engagement with people and make sure that the populace feel that they can come and be welcomed, and they don't have to belong to one of these existing households.
Excellent. So I hate bringing up COVID, but it's on everybody's mind. So as we're transitioning back to some semblance of normality, I know you said it didn't really hit you so much, but you did have a recent lockdown as well. But one of the questions I'm always interested in as a leader of your group is, what have you found success, or how have you found success in trying to lure people out or trying to nurture your community back into a position of growth? And it might not be you, but things that you've seen others doing in your local area that you've found successful.
Well, St. Florian had a lot of success with online interactions. So I believe at the moment our ANS officer is currently running our ANS class for this week online still. And when we went back to the populace a couple of weeks ago, one of the things that she found was that people were still interested in having that presence online because they could do it from the safety of their homes. And obviously going into Brisbane summer, that doesn't really leave a lot of space for in-person interaction in the sun. So this is something that we can definitely work on going forward.
It's really interesting to see how, and this is a worldwide phenomenon as well, obviously. But as COVID has happened, it's really been the push for technology to keep everything working as close to normal as possible. And even this program, was sort of like, it was born out of this necessity of, well, we can't talk to people face to face, so let's help people engage by having talks across the kingdom. But it's really shown that even after COVID is no longer such a prevalent threat, that we can still have engagement online, and that these things can be integrated into our regular game. Even if it's not really medieval period, but we don't play this game just for authenticity. We do play it for fun and friendship as well. So
it's definitely opened up the door for international contributions as well. So there's been a number of events that we've been able to log into that have been internationally run, and it just kind of opens up the door for everyone to make some new acquaintances.
And I've really enjoyed watching the live streaming of Crown tournaments as well. And it's sort of, especially knowing that people over in the States are also logging in to watch and keep an eye on the Crown tournaments and things. And it gives you that little bit of like kingdom pride, you're like, sort of like, yeah, this is my kingdom, and that was a really good fight, and I hope everyone saw it, So it's going forward, there will be a mixture. We will be returning face to face, and we will be having more traditional events, but I think we'll definitely be integrating more of the video conferencing and things into our regular events as well, because that really does help lower the bar for entry, so that people really don't feel that there's a big you don't have to come to a place, you don't have to interact with people and dress in funny clothes. Maybe you just get to know people a little bit first, and then online, and then maybe learn a few things or just chat to people, and then maybe you then feel comfortable to come along and try some of the other cool things that we do.
There's certainly there's been a bit of concern, I think, over the last couple of years about how we're going to transition back into the face-to-face and what online will look like in integrated into that face-to-face. And I think because we have such a strong culture of the theatre and the social engagement, that we're gonna come back stronger than ever, and all of that kind of special emotive and engaging and that kind of immersive experience will still be there, but we'll have the technology behind us to help push through things like learning, and like it's going to be such a strong education tool and a sharing tool. It's certainly not going to replace the game side of it. You can't replace fighting with videos.
Yeah, of course.
So it's going to, I'm really interested to see how in-person arts and sciences will mesh with the online, and if we're going to have like camera setups at in-person classes, or how that's going to work. I think there's a lot of really cool opportunity for that sharing.
I mean, we could have the Laurel prize tourney. We just stick a camera on a laurel and live stream them. Laurel for a day, maybe.
That's pretty cool. Right. So let's going back to yourselves as individuals. Do you have a personal persona, and how does that relate to the 14th century that you're bringing through as B&B? And also, I need to know where your name comes from, Lovet. Like, it's a very interesting name, so please tell us more.
So my name originated because everyone just referred to me as Victoria, which is my mundane name, and that went on for years and years and years, and then eventually I was just given the name, and there was a number of different period Puritan names that were thrown around, like Wanton Trollop was one of them, and there was a number of them, and I was like, I don't mind, everyone's going to call me Victoria anyway. And so I was given Lovet Dangerous, and now, look at where we are now. I don't think that was the name that they were considering when I was, going for Baroness. We've had a Crisp and Sexy though. We've had, a number of other fun names. Yeah. So
is it documented?
It is documented.
Very cool.
Yeah, those Puritans had very interesting ideas about names, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
They had a lot of interesting ideas.
That's one name for it. William Montrose originally was, it's actually documented and registered as a 16th century lowland Scots name. That was sort of my original idea for my persona way back in the day. And my interest in the 14th century really just came about because I liked the armor. And then I sort of got into the clothing, and I quite liked the look of like the coat hardies, and I started getting into making some of it. And then it sort of just became like, oh yeah, the 14th century, you know, one true century, 14th century mafia. And yeah, now I'm totally on the bandwagon now.
It's usually how it happens. It's nice in the SEA that we have the freedom to kind of decide that, you know, to slowly integrate into what you like, or to just never find anything specific and do a bunch of weird stuff.
Yeah.
But it's good that you found a nice nest.
Yeah, and there's always, the great thing about the SEA is that you can always just branch out, like you say, and try some different centuries, try a different region of the world, and, you know, play around with it. You don't have to pin down to one persona.
Absolutely.
I'm going to go and rescue our hellhounds.
I'll get you to answer this first. So aside from leading your barony, what are your other favorite SEA pastimes?
Well, I am an armored combatant. That was sort of originally what I got into in the SEA. That's one of the big things that I enjoy. Stepping up as Baron, I also authorized for rapier combat because I felt that it was important to be able to engage with the people who fight in rapier combat over here. And I found that I actually really enjoy that as well. It's a different form of combat, but it's still quite a lot of fun. Very different game, but yeah, lots of fun. I also like to do brewing. And so I also will often hang out with Drake and Yanto and Alaric and the others from the Jolly Duke. And we do brewing days, which mostly consists of standing around talking about food and brewing, because the actual beer making process is one of those things where it requires a little bit of work, you know, every couple of hours, but most times it's just waiting. You put the grain in the mash. You leave it for a couple hours. You take it out and you boil it. You leave it for a couple hours, and then you put it in a vat, and then you leave it for a couple weeks. So there's quite a lot of sitting around, sort of talking and eating.
Sorry, Your Excellency, Lovet. We were just asking, what are your SEA pastimes?
Primarily mine is garb and costuming and embroidery. And yes, previously I have done archery, but I wasn't very good at it, leading to the barista at my local cafe asking if I was being beaten at home. So I had to give that up. I was not very good at that. But other than that, yeah, mostly I use the SCA as a social outlet. So I am all about drinking Williams homebrews and just hanging out with my friends.
I feel like you've got some very complementary interests there.
Honestly, it's one of the worst things about being a brewer is that no one ever wants to drink your brews that much. They're always too polite. You bring like bottles of booze to an event, and people are like, oh no, I couldn't possibly. And I'm just like, please.
Get it out of my house.
20 liters of this, and I really want to go and make something different now. Been drinking the same beer. The beers that I have in my fridge at the moment are the ones that we served at our wedding in July, and I still haven't got through them yet. So,
do you have a favorite type of beer? I've got a big interest in beer, I gotta say. So I'm always.
It's not a lot that I won't drink. I really like German beers. I guess there's a lot of different, and I suppose that's because Germany and Czechoslovakia and Poland and sort of areas are where modern beers started to actually take form and have a style. A lot of the beer styles that we have nowadays are 19th century and they're modern, but a few of them still have sort of a lineage back to traditional times. So it's you can sort of trace it back to what they may have drunk back in the day. So I guess from a taste and from an historical interest perspective, I guess different German styles of beer would be mine. I think you're more of a cider person.
So is there any upcoming garb projects that you're planning on making as an extra like prestige project?
Well, with Rowany Festival only 2 weeks away, I feel like I'm going to have to get onto them pretty quickly, but we're really looking forward to Rowany hopefully going ahead next year if everything has settled back down by then. So we were just talking this morning about things that we're going to do as far as campsites and garb and the presents. It's interesting at the moment because as of last weekend, we are not the biggest pointy hats in St. Florian anymore. So we kind of have to figure out where we fit in amongst that as we go into festival and some of the bigger events next year. I think there will be some fun garb projects coming up.
And I think especially, if festival can go ahead, then it's going to be the first one for a couple of years. So I think that, it'd be really good to sort of hit the ground running and really wow everyone. And
because everybody's been at home through many, many lockdowns, and I imagine they've all been working on their garb, and there's going to be some spectacular outfits coming out.
Yeah, absolutely.
So speaking of events, what are some of the top events that you guys have in your barony? What should we come and check out if we've never travelled up to St. Florian before?
We have a couple of big ones.
Yeah, Great Northern War is obviously the big event that people talk about, and this is often sort of run as a joint team with ourselves and Riverhaven, and that's sort of the biggest event in our region. But there are also some of the signature events for St. Florian ourselves are Knights of the North, which is usually held in about May, and the Battle of Botany Cross, which is usually held in October. Knights of the North is a pas d'armes, and all of the knights from Riverhaven and St. Florian, they have all of their banners and they come in and they hold the field against all challengers. And it's a really fun tournament because there's quite a lot of ceremony and quite a lot of pageantry to it. But there's also really interesting challenges. And I think I remember someone challenging Berenger to a counted blows, matched pole arms for 1 minute straight or something like that. And that was a spectacle to see. So there's a lot of very interesting sort of tournament styles there that aren't just, round robin or double elimination. So that's always a fun event.
I remember one that was a thumb war over the barrier.
Yes.
It was Sir Stefan and
Oh, it might have been Gus. I can't remember, or maybe Gus.
That being a standout for me at one event. And then we have Battle of Botany Cross, which is a team melee.
Yeah,
event.
and this is one of the older events in St. Florian, and it goes all the way back. St. Florian has been a barony for 20 years this year. So I think it was just before Lockrock became a kingdom that we became a barony. And the Battle of Botany Cross, you enter melee teams of up to 4 fighters, and then you fight it in a round robin style tournament, with the winners then being proclaimed the defenders of the St. Florian War Banner. And there's a whole ceremony and invocation that goes with it. So there's still that sort of court element of it.
And there's a coveted pin for the winners, isn't there?
Sorry, what was that?
There's a very coveted pin that the winners usually receive.
Yes, they're very very highly sought after. We haven't been able to hold it for a couple of years due to COVID, so hopefully we'll be able to hold that this year.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite tradition from your barony? I know obviously you've only recently stood up, but of course you've lived there for quite some time. So there's got to be something that you particularly resonate with.
I don't know so much about a favorite tradition, but I have a favorite award, which is the Order of St. Florian. just because it just highlights all of the good things that people are doing, and just, yeah, it's kind of the most prestigious award that we can give out. And
yeah, compared to other baronies, we have relatively few awards. I think there are only 4 awards that we have. And then the Order of St. Florian is sort of above the rest of the awards. And the other awards are for recognizing, you know, people's contributions in service and the arts and sciences, fighting, and also courtesy. But the Order of St. Florian is for people who have distinguished themselves over a long period of time and have left their mark, I guess, on St. Florian as a barony. And it's always a special award, and we've been lucky enough to award 2 of them, three of them,
Awesome.
to Rufus and Tova when they stepped down as Baron and Baroness, and to Master Yanto Van Diemen recently. And so that's a special award for us as well, because it's always very highly charged and emotional, and it's very good to recognize when people have made huge contributions.
Sounds great. I don't know. I'm sure there's some other baronies that have something similar, but I can't think of any that have like a, you know, this is a like you're special to this barony kind of award.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's very emotional, I think, because we call forward the order.
Yeah.
And
it's designed to be sort of like, it's analogous to a peerage in the kingdom, and obviously we can't give peerages, but that's why the other awards are awards and this one is an order, and we call forward the order, and you know, they surround the new incoming candidate. And yeah, the ceremony is designed in order to evoke that importance of the award, and it's not given lightly.
Very cool. Do you have any favorite Lockhart traditions outside of the barony?
That's a good question. It's kind of hard to tell because I've never really played in the SCA outside of Lockhart, so there might be things to Lockhart SCA that are different from the SCA in general, so I'm not sure. Rowani Festival, I suppose. It's not really a tradition, but you know, it's it's always kind of the highlight of the year, especially by the third day when you've sort of forgotten about the mundane world and you've you sort of just, you know, you're in the zone and you're just having fun and fighting and drinking in the tavern. Yeah,
I think probably the Fighter Auction Tavern, that's always a highlight for me at festival. I just think there's just so much fun around it, and you know, the gifts that people are given afterwards. It's just, there's a lot of involvement across the kingdom in that, I think.
I guess this is probably true of like Australians and New Zealanders anyway, but like we're a very friendly, down to earth bunch. Like there are very few people that you would be sort of afraid to at least, you know, approach and say hi to. So I think that's one of the great things about our kingdom, is that it's just very friendly and welcoming. You know, you can more or less just walk into someone's campsite and say, hey, I'm so-and-so, and, you know, drink my beer.
So I know from experience that the role of Baron and Baroness is one that you always bear with friends. So who are the heroes in your group, the other movers and shakers that help to support the barony?
Well, I guess one of the people that we probably have the most to thank for is our Chamberlain, the Honourable Lady Kamaris Galarena. She's been someone who's really helped us to just get organised and know, you know, what to do and when we have to do it, and she helps keep us to. Yeah. She's very good at organising, and I think she gets a kick out of it.
I thought I was good at spreadsheets, and then I saw her spreadsheets. But when we took over as B&B, we inherited a number of historical St. Florian items, and there was boxes of largesse, and she's really helped us to document everything that we currently have, so that we know when we pass on the mantle to the next B&B that the barony is incredibly organised now.
Yeah, exactly. And our seneschal Lady Sophia is also very, very helpful. She's very much on top of her job and everything like that. But we've had a number of people throughout the barony who have assisted us. the team who helped us to build our garb and to get that organized. There's probably too many people to really name, but yeah, there has been a lot of help and a lot of offers of help as well. So I think St. Florian has a good culture, and we're a very supportive barony. So there are a lot of people who are willing to share their talents and skills.
Yeah. Not to mention all the previous B&Bs who, set the groundwork for us.
Yeah.
So it's much easier to come in and know what we're doing. There's, documents with the court and
Yeah, it feels like St. Florian's a very peer-heavy barony compared to some of the others. So I think all of that knowledge and history, like you must have a good base and a lot of people to go to draw on. If you have a question or need to learn something.
And I guess at the same time, like neither of us are peers. And you draw knowledge from different places and you try to, build something, but and sometimes it just comes down to, sort of forging ahead and building something, and you just try and do the best you can, I guess.
Jumping back to you guys for a minute, what's a proud moment that you've had in the SCA? One of your, proud about something you've done or something that someone close to you has done?
So I think for me, and it's going to come out a little bit weird and maybe a bit stalkery, but being at festival and getting to watch Andreas get knighted, and I was on Felix's King's Guard. This is while yourself and Felix were reigning, Eva. You were there. you probably remember. But getting to sort of like stand behind you guys and watch Andreas get knighted, and obviously Andreas was someone that I had been training with for a few years at that point. And so that was a really special moment for me, and I really, really enjoyed that I got to be there, sort of front row. So that was definitely one that I remember.
I can't think of anything in particular, but I think over the last 18 months, as everyone's been suffering through COVID and through the plague, just the resilience that everyone's shown, the fact that everyone's been able to come together and help each other. And it's just, there's still been that presence online, even if we can't get together in person, where you just feel supported. So, when we talked about becoming B&B, it was, who do we have around us who can actually support us in this? Because it's a bit of a challenge. You guys would know from reigning, you have to have a very strong support network around you. But
yeah, especially with the short amount of time that we had, it was very much, here is the learning curve, and there is the fixed date. It's right there. You're just going to have to hit the ground running.
Yeah, it was fun too, because our wedding was 3 weeks after the investiture. So it was a very intense 6 weeks.
Yeah, we were really, really lucky as well, because I think there was like a lockdown the weekend before the event. And then we got to have the event in person, which was a great blessing. And then there was like another lockdown, and then there was our wedding, which we got to have in person. And there was like a lockdown the week after. So we managed to get just the right dates to have these things in person, which was really nice. It was nice to be able to do that.
It was meant to be.
Did you ever consider combining the two just to room at once? They're all going to be here.
I was very adamant at our wedding that there was not, like, we had obviously many SCA people, friends through SCA at our wedding, and I was so adamant that it was not going to be an SCA wedding. And then during his toast, Victoria's dad let off a huzzah, and then the whole room erupted. And I was just like, oh.
He was just so happy to be involved. He just considers himself an honorary member of Descartes, I think.
I know how you feel. We had, when Felix proposed to me after he won Crown, and then we had several people go, "You should get married at coronation." I went, no, because I want to wear a normal dress, because I do this every weekend.
You guys don't have lives outside of the SCA. That doesn't make any sense.
Sorry, Penny, I interrupted you.
That's all good. Your Excellency, Lovet, you were just saying that your dad considers considers himself an honorary member of Descartes. Does he play in the SCA, or do you have other family that play?
No, I don't. There's only me who actively plays. But yes, it was interesting blending our family and friends, and the majority of our friends were SCA. Like there was a number of people from my work who were invited to the wedding, and they didn't know the extent. They didn't understand about the pointy hat, and they got to the event and they were a little bit blown away by what we do on weekends.
Yeah, I think we maybe had like 9 or 10 tables of people, and I think 2 were like the work and family tables. Yeah. And we got to the stage where we were like, do we seat everyone by household, or do we seat them by, like, how do we work this? Do we have a badger table and a Vont bar table? But this person played in 2 different households. Where do we put it? It was a bit of a logistical experiment. Yeah.
How about you, William? Do you have family that play, or?
No, my dad had come along to a couple of tournaments just because it was a good opportunity to see each other when I was, so he lives down in sort of the Bunbury southwest region of WA, so occasionally we'd go down for tournaments there, and then he would come along and at least get to see him. But other than that, I don't think they really, it's not their thing, I guess. I suppose there's a certain type of person that is attracted to the SCA, and it depends on what you're interested in. But yeah, I don't think they've expressed any particular interest. But yeah, if it's not for you, it's not for you, I guess.
So we have to ask the obligatory question: do you have a favorite "no shit, there I was" story?
Oh,
my oh shit there I was, no shit there I was story. This was Roni Festival during Ariston and Lilavati's reign, and it was the Warfield where we had the siege elephant, and Andreas was piloting the elephant, which in case you weren't there or didn't know this, for everyone watching, this consisted of a sort of a rigid frame with 2 pole arms mounted on either side, and these were the tusks. And the elephant was to be considered a siege weapon, so if it touched you anywhere on your shield, on your person, then you were considered dead. And I had been killed in some skirmish, and I was walking off the field, and I turned around, and Duke Njal had attracted the attention of the elephant and was just booking it towards the enemy flank with Andreas like 2 inches behind him. And the look on his face as he was looking back, and just like he was just running for his life, Andreas 2 seconds behind him, and just crashing into the enemy flank. And it was just a really comical sight for me.
Love it. That's great.
I can't think of any. I don't have any entertaining stories like that. I think all of my most memorable SCA moments are around ceremony and pageantry, when Vont Bar had their war banners together and they all marched down to the Warfield. And yeah, I can't think of anything off the top of my head around that.
That's
okay. So you've mentioned the households a couple of times. How have the households that you've been part of influenced you in your SCA careers, or what you've been interested in?
Well, Morales Beaumont is the household that I belong to. So I've been squired to Sir Gabriel since 2017, I think. And that's been a huge influence in how I play the SCA, because it has provided that tight-knit sort of community. And especially after moving up to Brisbane and being able to regularly go to household trainings and interacting with household members weekly rather than every couple months. That's been a huge support. So obviously Gabriel and Constantia, they have a very, very strong sort of support network. Not only are they themselves great resources in the SCA just because of their experience and their feats, but they have sort of accumulated all these other resources. And I think being able to move to a new city where I didn't sort of have anything here. Having a household here meant that I instantly had a support network. I instantly had friends who could give me a lift or help me move something, and just people that I could hang around with. And it was sort of like, instant support network. That was a big thing for me.
Yeah, I would agree. So Descartes is my household. I've previously played with Ronbar, but I've never officially been a member of Ronbar. But Descartes living in Palit, and then they're so spread out that you've constantly got people who you can interact with in different cities. And Descartes has a lot of ties to the US, so with tiger sharks. So yes, there's just echoing what you've said. There's a very big support network out there, which is good to tap into for certain things. Other times I go places and I say I'm a member of Descartes, and people go, really? So we're known for being quite loud and boisterous and.
Say it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Can't invite us anywhere.
I have never heard that. Brucey, if you're watching, never heard that.
So being a younger set of B&Bs, and also, as you mentioned, you're not peers yet, what advice would you give to other younger non-peer couples when it comes to the application process and the selection process for becoming a B&B? Because it's fairly straightforward, but it's not unstressful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, it is a big commitment, but it shouldn't discourage you. B&B is like sort of this really unique position in the SCA, in that you get to work with a single group. A crown may get to travel from region to region, but they don't get to sort of work with the one region and really get to know the people and be those people's representative. And it's one of the interesting things in the SCA is that the barons and baronesses are chosen by the crown. They're not reliant on you having any particular prowess. And so, of course, it doesn't hurt to have prowess, but it means that B&B is somewhat more attainable, I suppose, for younger people. I would encourage anyone who could see themselves in that position to go for it, because you don't know, what will happen or how the crown will decide, and it's a real unique opportunity to sort of see behind the curtain a little bit in the SCA, as well as to really sort of have an impact. You get to sort of leave a legacy in the history of your group, and but yeah, it is a big responsibility as well.
As far as applications go, though, I would say tap into your skill set. So we have completely different skill sets. William is more of a people person. I am really not, but I am much better at organizing. And I think we documented that through our application process and how we would steer our local game using those skills.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to ask for help, I guess, as well. It's like, people around you often want to help, but they may not know how. So don't sit around and wait for people to offer. Approach people and say, hey, would you mind doing this? And, a few little things that people can help with really, really take the load off.
Absolutely. It's one of the positions that I think can be very much sort of overlooked a little bit, because you have this massive opportunity to nurture your local group. So even if you have the crown in your barony, you will have a completely different perspective, and you have that opportunity that the crown don't have to do that one-on-one sort of interacting and inspiring. And it's a huge role that I think, if people don't know it, you don't realize how much work and love goes into it. So thank you very much for your hands up.
You've said that there's a lot of responsibility in it, but there also is a lot of reward. Is there something that has been a favorite moment or something that you've really enjoyed doing so far?
I love giving out the awards. I'm channeling Oprah. I'm like, you get an award, you get an award. So having been locked down for 18 months, there was a number of things that were going on in the background, and we've been really pleased to be able to reward people who are constantly giving of themselves in any sort of form.
And like one of the things that we've been trying to do is to recognize people who may have been overlooked for some reason or another. Award recommendations can be a bit hard sometimes because you always ask people to give recommendations, but very few people give them. And I think that like a lot of people think that, you know, a recommendation has to be this big formal letter and, you know, has to have certain wording and navigate some Byzantine system, but it's really not. It can be as little as just, you know, approaching us at an event and saying, hey, I saw this person helping pack up, or, you know, it doesn't have to be much, but all the feedback really helps us to recognize people that need recognition or deserve it.
Somebody going in and washing dishes at every event, you know, we might not see that because we're sitting at the high table and don't get to venture out that much.
And this is one of the things that we have asked of our courtiers as well, is that part of their role is to help us in court and to provide a courtly presence, but also to keep an eye out for people doing things so that we can recognize the people who deserve to be recognized. So our little, it's like a little spy network.
And on that recommendation thing too, you don't need to use the flowery medieval language. Like it can just be mundane. It can be in point form. It can be, hey, I saw this person do this thing. I don't really know what award is appropriate, but these are the things that they do. So everybody get your recommendations in. It's very helpful to hear what's going on when you can't see everything.
Yeah, and it's having not really thought about this that much, and I was guilty of the same thing, like until we put on the hats, and then suddenly I'm like, I really wish more people would speak up because it makes it so much easier for us.
Yeah, I think baronially that is harder because a lot of the time people send their recommendations to the Crown or they do it through canon law, and it completely goes over your head until maybe the Crown come to your barony and go, how do you feel about these recommendations? Like, why didn't I get them? And for those watching, you know, have a think and a look around your baronies and the people that specifically nurture you, because a lot of the time it goes for very new members all the way up to very experienced. A lot of people will look at, especially in a barony that's so peer heavy like St. Florian, I'm sure there's a lot of people that do a lot of great things, but people go, oh, they're beyond that. But people still like to be recognized for service over decades. I think I heard a story once back in the day about Sir Brucey not having his AOA for a decade or something like that. Because people do go, they probably have X, Y, or Z. So it's so
there
important.
are so many people who don't have their AOAs. I didn't get one until Beatrice and Henri gifted me one at a Fields of Gold. And I was like, I've been playing for 6 years.
Yeah, that happens. Like you make the assumption that someone has something because it's so obvious. Of course they have it. But yeah, it's often the case that they don't.
One of the things with like recommendations as well is that sometimes people think that they have to recommend for a specific award. So they're like, oh, I will send a recommendation, but I'm not sure if they already have this award. Like, doesn't matter. Just say they're doing cool stuff because the people who have the records will check.
Yeah.
You know, we had to sort of compile a spreadsheet of, you know, to the best of our knowledge, who has what baronial awards in our barony, and we go and check the spreadsheet and see, you know, does this person have it already, or is there a name that's glaringly missing from this list? Or
Absolutely.
And with that too, recognition doesn't always have to be the set awards. Like a gift or a public thank you is, you know, something that can be just as precious, having that recognition. So, let us all know.
Your Excellencies, we are coming up to our hour now, so it's almost time for us to bid you adieu. But before you go, was there anything that you wanted to say or touch on before we leave you? Now's your time.
Anything you want to say?
He's looking at me because I keep threatening Queen in the North. I'm like, oh, I should probably not. We have a Queen in the North currently.
We are in fealty to their majesties. we have sent through our letter of fealty. We are humble and peaceful servants in the peaceful mercantile barony of Saint Florian de la Riviere.
Of course, congratulations to King Leofric and Queen Sabine, stepped up last weekend. So exciting, and it's got to be exciting for you guys.
It's very well deserved.
Yes.
We were sitting watching the tournament, and it was some really excellent fighting. And
the standard of fighting was fantastic last week. It was really good to watch.
Yeah, and I think Leofric has definitely deserved that win. And so we're definitely looking forward to working closely with their majesties, and hopefully tending their barony with the gentle hand of diplomacy. Always, vaguely threateningly holding the sword of war, but we don't use that unless we have to.
It would be boring if you didn't. You've got to.
How do you think we got to be a peaceful mercantile barony? It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't just happen.
Thank you again, Your Excellencies. Thank you so much for joining us. Happy tenure, and thank you, Your Grace, for joining me as well. I believe next week we will have the honor to be able to have Master Ianto and Sir Octamasades join us again for another interview of Crown Between Two Roses. Thank you all again for spending your afternoon with us, and we look forward to seeing you face to face sometime in the future.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you, Graces.
Thank you. And thank you, Master Magnus, in the background as always. I'm sure he's giving us a thumbs up. Again, good afternoon, good evening, good night, and take care of yourselves and each other.